As we delve into the world of modern eating habits, we rarely consider the long-term consequences of seemingly mundane and harmless rituals. One of the most common, yet most insidious, is the daily consumption of sugary sodas, particularly cola. It's no longer just a thirst-quenching drink on a hot day. For millions of people around the world, it's become an obligatory lunchtime companion, a source of quick energy, or a way to combat boredom. But what actually happens inside the human body when this dark, fizzy elixir enters not just sporadically, but day after day, year after year? Let's begin now. We'll consider what happens if your daily dose of cola is a modest 0.33-liter can. At first glance, this seems like an insignificant amount, an almost harmless weakness. However, it is precisely with such a small dose that a subtle but systemic restructuring of the entire body begins, stretched out over time. The first week of this regimen is marked by adaptation and the first biochemical signals. Your taste buds, bombarded with intense sweetness, tens of times greater than the natural sweetness of fruit, begin to change. The brain registers a powerful source of instant pleasure associated with the release of dopamine. This creates a strong neural connection that, over time, can transform a simple habit into a ritual difficult to break. Physiologically, every ingestion of this sugary syrup, even a small amount, causes a sharp spike in blood glucose. Your pancreas responds by urgently releasing a burst of insulin, the hormone responsible for unlocking the doors of your cells and allowing sugar to enter for energy production. But because the sugar arrives in a pure, concentrated form, and very quickly, this feels like a small, daily stress on your entire regulatory system. By the end of the week, you may not even notice the slight fluctuations in energy. A brief surge after consumption is followed by a slight decline as your body copes with the stress. It's important to understand that even this dose already triggers the process of glycation, the damage to proteins by sugar molecules, which over time affect skin elasticity and vascular health. A month of daily consumption of a small can goes by, and the changes deepen. The pancreas is constantly, albeit slightly, overloaded. Your body's cells, forced to constantly absorb excess glucose, begin to defend themselves by reducing the sensitivity of their receptors to insulin. This is the first step toward insulin resistance, the foundation for future metabolic problems. At the same time, your gut microbiome changes. Some of the sugar, unabsorbed in the small intestine, enters the large intestine, becoming food not for the beneficial bacteria that feed on fiber, but for bacteria and yeast that thrive on simple sugars. This can lead to a slight imbalance, manifested by occasional bloating and increased gas production. The acid contained in the drink, albeit in small quantities, begins its subtle work. Tooth enamel, the hardest tissue in the body, is subjected to brief but regular daily attacks from phosphoric acid. Saliva gradually neutralizes this acid, but it takes time for the balance to be fully restored. If you sip cola slowly or drink it with food, the acid's contact time with the enamel increases, triggering demineralization, the slow leaching of calcium and phosphates. A year later, the consequences become more significant. Despite the relatively low calorie content of one can, about 140 kilocalories, an additional 50,000 kilocalories accumulates over the course of a year. Theoretically, this is equivalent to 6 to 7 kilograms of fat. In practice, the weight gain may not be as significant because the body, adapting to the constant excess of light carbohydrates, begins to conserve energy by lowering its basal metabolic rate and reducing spontaneous physical activity. The result is a slow but steady gain of 1 to 2 kilograms of fat mass per year. More serious changes occur internally. The liver, the main processing center for fructose from corn syrup, begins to accumulate fat in its cells. The early stages of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease develop. Bone density, especially in women, may begin to decline as phosphoric acid, in order to maintain the blood's acid-base balance, binds with calcium, which the body takes from the bones. It is a long and silent process, with no symptoms today, but creating risks for decades to come. 10 years of daily consumption of even one small can leads to a cumulative effect that can no longer be ignored. The risk of developing type 2 diabetes increases by 15 to 20% compared to those who do not regularly consume sugary drinks. The pancreas, overworked for decades, may show signs of depleted reserves. Osteopenia, a decrease in bone mineral density, especially during menopause in women, can manifest earlier and more severely. Chronic low-level inflammation, fueled by visceral fat and disrupted microflora, becomes the basis for many age-related diseases. Thus, a seemingly harmless daily can of cola over 10 years becomes a significant factor accelerating aging and increasing the likelihood of serious chronic diseases. This is not an immediate catastrophe, but a slow shift of the entire health system into a higher risk zone. By increasing our daily dose to half a liter, we leave the zone of silent background harm and enter a territory where the consequences become more noticeable, systemic, and begin to manifest as specific symptoms. This is no longer just a habit. It's a serious burden the body is forced to cope with, and its defense mechanisms gradually fail. After a week of drinking this amount, the key change is the onset of pronounced energy swings. Half a liter of cola contains enough caffeine and sugar to cause a powerful but short-lived surge of activity. You feel a surge of energy, an improved mood, and the ability to concentrate. However, this effect is artificial and comes at a high cost. After just an hour and a half, when the pancreas has produced a massive amount of insulin to utilize approximately 55 grams of sugar, and the caffeine has begun to lose its potency, a sharp decline occurs. Blood glucose levels can even drop below baseline, causing fatigue, irritability, brain fog, and a strong desire for something sweet or fatty to boost energy again. A vicious cycle of addiction develops, where the drink becomes not a source of pleasure, but a necessary stimulant to return to normal. The psychological attachment to the ritual strengthens, turning into an obsessive need. A month of this practice leads to the first clear signs from the digestive system. The carbonated and acidic environment of the drink in such volumes begins to seriously irritate the stomach lining and relax the lower esophageal sphincter, the muscular valve that prevents the backflow of stomach contents. The result is heartburn, acid belching, and a burning sensation behind the breastbone, especially if drinking cola on an empty stomach or with a large meal. At the same time, a more dramatic scenario unfolds in the liver. The liver simply cannot process the enormous amount of fructose ingested daily with the drink into glycogen. An emergency metabolic pathway is activated, converting fructose into fat. Fat droplets begin to accumulate inside hepatocytes, the liver cells. This condition is called steatosis, or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. The liver enlarges, and its ability to detoxify and synthesize nutrients gradually declines. Another insidious consequence is the development of leptin resistance. Leptin is a satiety hormone produced by fat cells that signals the brain that there's enough energy. Fructose disrupts this connection, and the brain stops receiving satiety signals, triggering chronic overeating and cravings for high-calorie foods. A year of regularly drinking half a liter of cola a day leaves a distinct mark on your body and health. Weight increases noticeably, with fat deposited primarily in the abdominal area, around the waist and internal organs. This visceral fat isn't passive energy storage, but an active endocrine organ that secretes substances that provoke inflammation and increase blood pressure. Many people at this stage are diagnosed with metabolic syndrome, a cluster of conditions including obesity, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, and low good cholesterol. The risk of developing type 2 diabetes becomes very high. Teeth also suffer damage, Enamel is subjected to such a regular acid attack that visible areas of erosion and demineralization can appear, and teeth become sensitive to cold and hot. 10 years of such practice practically guarantees chronic diseases. In a significant proportion of consumers, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease progresses to steatohepatitis, or liver inflammation due to obesity. This is a direct path to fibrosis, cirrhosis, and ultimately liver cancer. The cardiovascular system, attacked for decades by high blood sugar, insulin, inflammation, and high blood pressure, wears down. Atherosclerosis develops at an accelerated rate, blood vessels lose elasticity, and cholesterol plaques actively form on their walls. The risk of myocardial infarction or ischemic stroke increases significantly between the ages of 40 and 50. Furthermore, the constant burden of phosphoric acid and sugar on the kidneys creates ideal conditions for kidney stones. Thus, drinking half a liter of cola a day for 10 years is a conscious choice for a future filled with visits to a cardiologist, endocrinologist, and hepatologist, the need for constant medication, and a high risk of sudden vascular accident. This is a path to a manageable but inevitable decline in quality of life. The transition to daily consumption of a full liter of cola marks a transition to a qualitatively different state, where the drink ceases to be just a beverage and becomes a significant, often essential, component of the diet, exerting profound pressure on all body systems. This is no longer simply a risk of developing diseases in the future. It is the active development of pathological conditions here and now. After a week of consuming a liter a day, neurological and fluid electrolyte disturbances become more prominent. The amount of caffeine entering the body reaches levels comparable to several cups of strong coffee, but it's combined with a huge dose of sugar, masking its stimulating effect. The nervous system is chronically overstimulated, followed by profound compensatory fatigue. Sleep architecture is disrupted. Deep, slow-wave sleep phases, during which tissue repair, immune system strengthening, and memory consolidation occur, are shortened or eliminated. A person may get the required 8 hours of sleep, but wake up completely exhausted, with a heavy head and an inability to concentrate. At the same time, caffeine exerts its powerful diuretic properties, depleting the body of not only water, but also vital electrolytes, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. A state of chronic cellular dehydration develops, which paradoxically can lead to edema, as the body, attempting to retain fluid, stores it in the intercellular space. The skin becomes dry, loses its turgor, and thirst intensifies, often mistakenly quenched with another shot of cola, perpetuating a vicious cycle. A month of this regimen leads to the first serious signs from the kidneys and muscular system. The kidneys are forced to filter not only excess water, but also a colossal amount of dissolved substances, sugars, phosphates, and dyes. This creates an ideal environment for the crystallization of salts, primarily calcium oxalates and phosphates. The formation of sand and then kidney stones begins, which may be accompanied by a dull ache in the lower back and changes in urine. A deficiency of magnesium and potassium, actively flushed out in the urine, begins to manifest itself in muscle cramps, especially at night, eyelid twitching, and numbness in the extremities. The heart, as a muscular organ, also suffers from this deficiency. Episodes of arrhythmia and rapid or irregular heartbeat may occur, often accompanied by general fatigue. The acid load on the body reaches such a level that to neutralize it, the body begins to intensively borrow calcium from the bones. This is no longer just a potential risk, but the beginning of an active process of skeletal demineralization. A year of drinking a liter of cola daily compromises the body's structural integrity. Bones lose density, osteopenia develops, and then osteoporosis, which significantly increases the risk of pathological fractures of the femoral neck, radius, or vertebrae, even with minor injuries. Kidney stones, if they have already formed, can be subject to constant micro-trauma and infections, leading to the development of chronic pyelonephritis and a gradual decline in filtration function. Against this background, blood creatinine levels, a marker of kidney failure, begin to rise. The digestive tract is permanently disrupted. The combination of sugar, acid, and gas kills beneficial microflora, provokes small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, causes chronic constipation or diarrhea, severe bloating, and cramping. The absorption of nutrients from food is impaired, exacerbating vitamin and mineral deficiencies. 10 years of such practice is a recipe for severe disability. Renal failure can progress to the terminal stage, when regular hemodialysis or organ transplantation becomes the only salvation. Type 2 diabetes, almost inevitable at this stage, often progresses to insulin-dependent diabetes, requiring constant injections and carrying a high risk of vascular complications. Blindness, gangrene of the feet, and neuropathy. The cardiovascular system is worn to the limit. Left ventricular hypertrophy and atherosclerosis of the coronary and cerebral arteries pose a direct threat of a massive heart attack or stroke, which can lead to sudden death or severe paralysis. A person's appearance also eloquently testifies to internal collapse. The face is constantly puffy due to poor kidney function, and the skin, due to the destruction of collagen by sugar molecules, is covered with deep wrinkles, appearing yellow and saggy. This is a state of complete loss of health, when life turns into a struggle with complications and dependence on medical procedures, and a daily bottle of cola from a source of imaginary pleasure becomes a symbol of a total loss of control over one's own body. Let's consider an extreme case: 2 liters of cola daily. This is no longer a habit, but a total replacement of all natural processes. After a week, the body falls into a state of severe dependence and panic. Brief bursts of energy from sugar and caffeine are followed by deep dips, requiring a new dose simply to maintain minimal functionality. The digestive system is in crisis. Pathogenic microflora, feeding on sugar, displaces beneficial flora, damaging the intestinal walls and triggering a wave of systemic inflammation throughout the body. This condition creates a vicious cycle, where health worsens with each passing day, and the only temporary relief seems to be another sip, which only worsens the imbalance. A month of this regimen results in nutritional starvation with an excess of empty calories. A severe vitamin and mineral deficiency develops, manifesting as muscle weakness, hair loss, and a complete collapse of the immune system. Skin suffering from dehydration and glycation ages catastrophically. Kidneys, overloaded with phosphates and sugar, begin to fail, manifesting as edema. At this stage, the body's internal reserves are already depleted, and a phase of active tissue and organ destruction begins. The psychological state is characterized by profound apathy, interrupted by outbursts of irritability when the need for a drink becomes unbearable. A year of this practice leads to rapid organ failure. The liver, unable to cope with the influx of fructose, progresses from fatty degeneration to cirrhosis. The heart, pumping thick blood through damaged vessels, enlarges and weakens, leading to heart failure. The pancreas becomes exhausted, leading to complete and insulin-dependent diabetes. Peripheral nerve damage, neuropathy begins, causing excruciating pain and loss of sensation in the extremities. Social life comes to a virtual standstill, as all energy is devoted to coping with the pain and seeking short-term relief. 10 years of such a journey is usually the point of no return. The condition is characterized by multiple organ failure, end-stage renal failure requiring dialysis, severe diabetes complications, and high cancer risks. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect is complete psychological and social degradation, where life is reduced to the search for the next fix, and the individual dissolves in addiction. a person finds themselves trapped, created by years of daily choices, where the only reality becomes pain, limitations, and despair. And the hope of recovery seems elusive and unattainable. And today we've seen that daily drinking is a path from an imperceptible imbalance to total collapse. A daily cola is a slow but sure loan, issued by health at monstrous interest rates that will lead to future illnesses. Choosing water isn't a denial of pleasure, but an investment in freedom. Freedom from pain, addiction, and fear of the future.